Good evening and welcome to SVA MFA Fine Arts Talk Series. Tonight's talk features three recent graduates of the SVA MFA Fine Arts program who have each started their own art-related enterprises. Leah Dixon, who graduated in 2014, Mike Ursuta, who graduated in 2007, and Brian Whiteley, class of 2013. They'll all speak about their motivations, challenges, and the rewards involved in becoming a culture producer. Leah Dixon makes sculpture and sculptural performance in an attempt to expose ideas that have been obscured by nostalgia, nationalism, and political correctness. She's co-owner of Beverly, a downtown New York City bar and art space. Mike Ursuta co-founded the Lower East Side-based Ramiken Crucible gallery in 2009. The gallery is best known for its flexible and ambitious, often non-commercial programming. And Brian Whiteley is a New York City-based artist who creates works that incorporate sculpture, video, new media, and performance. He's the co-founder and director of the Satellite Art Show, a Miami-based art fair that uses a variety of unconventional display spaces and collaborates with a rotating cast of not-for-profit art centers and curators to provide viewers with unconventional art viewing experiences. It was widely viewed by people who were down in Miami this past December as the best art fair in town. So please join me in welcoming Leah Dixon, Mike Ursuta, and Brian Whiteley. And we'll begin with Leah Dixon.
So I only have 7 minutes, and so it's very hard to talk about Beverly's because Beverly's is open 7 days a week and about 360 days a year. Every day at 5 p.m. we open on the dot with no excuse. So what I thought I would do is kind of make a list of questions to sort of think about as I talk that I ask myself constantly that made me want to make Beverly's and that will hopefully make you guys want to embark upon a non-traditional project, whether that's in the form of a business or not in the future. So Beverly's is a bar with a brick and mortar location at 21 Essex Street in Lower East Side, Chinatown. But what has happened from that brick and mortar establishment is it's kind of like cycled out and become much conceptually grander than that, and has now taken the form of kind of a rotating curatorial project where we are like given space and budgets through other institutions to come and essentially like create programming and then create a scene. So I can talk to you guys a bunch about like bar stuff anytime, and a lot of you have probably been to Beverly's. So it's a bar, we make money by selling drinks, and we use that money to then pay myself and my partners, and then also afford to do projects that would potentially normally in a different kind of establishment need to generate money, like potentially buy the sale of artwork or buy the sale of ticket sales for a performance for like, let's say like a rapper or something. We don't need to do that at Beverly's because it's sustained by the drink sales. I opened Beverly's while I was in grad school in my first year, so that was really intense, and Allison can speak and Donna can speak for that as well. And kind of just doing it absolutely out of necessity. I needed a job. I had been a bartender for eight years almost before that, sustaining my art practice, which doesn't make me money, just costs me lots of money. So the bar I was working at closed. I basically took that opportunity to get investment, and from there, over the next 11 months, spent all of that investment and more, a little bit, opening Beverly's, which now is there. And we just had our 3rd year anniversary. So I guess like to think about these questions a little bit. I think that the reason Beverly's works, number one, with just me as a human being, as a person who needs to be employed, but also as an artist, is it's a way that I can create a platform for things that I believe in, that I don't believe necessarily have an outlet immediately, and it's a way for me to kind of break through the bureaucracy of a typical gallery model and the bureaucracy, I think, of just like because things are happening in real time at Beverly's, I don't need to make anyone jump through a bunch of hoops or a vetting system. I can kind of just say like, do what you want to do here as long as it works. It like kind of abides by the rules that everyone agrees that we kind of prescribe to, which is to respect each other and promote each other and be positive. And then tell your friends and come, and they buy drinks. So it kind of is this like way to circumvent a traditional model. And why do I think that that is important? I think that's important, number one, because it needs to work, because I need to make money. And I also think I personally was so tired as an artist of hearing people tell me, oh, all you need to do is go and be by yourself and just focus. And I was like, well, what kind of crazy privileged advice is that? My life becomes this solo residency. I don't get to, I have to make money and I have to be a part of the world. So how can I start manipulating the world that I was in, which was predominantly the Lower East Side art world, which was kind of becoming more and more of a thing as Beverly's was beginning. So yeah, we have done a lot of off-site projects. Most notably, we were the special project at the Material Art Fair in Mexico City last year, and then also just this year as well, where we didn't pay for an art fair booth. We were given a much larger space to kind of conduct real-time programming, collaborating with artists that were invited to come be a part of our space, performers, and then also inviting some Mexico City-based artists to come and be a part of it as well. We're currently in talks to do a program with the Berlin Biennial, which I'm really excited about. We can make all that funding happen. And yeah, so that's Beverly's. I don't know. Was that 7 minutes?
It was perfect, thank you.
Okay, cool. Thanks, guys.
I just want to say thanks for the introduction. I loved you when you played the Hulk. That was fantastic. Best Hulk ever. I'm just going to go to my website and we can look at some pictures. So I started the gallery in 2009 when I was unemployed. I was on unemployment, and now I'm rich. Actually, I'm not rich. My wife is rich, which is even better. But she wasn't rich back then, and neither was I. That would disqualify me for unemployment, technically. What have I done? I did some cool stuff. Let's see. We were in Miami, too. We were in Art Basel. That was our booth. I'm going to make this a little smaller. That is the work of Andra Ursuta and Lucas Blaylock, two things that absolutely have nothing to do with each other. Andra's work is sort of like these obelisks with these perfect pearlescent white smooth surfaces, just like white people, old white men, just rigid and totally boxy and strict in their ways, full of points, obelisks like the Ku Klux Klan. It's really about kind of defeating kind of this idea of whiteness or putting it on display. And she did a show of these works in the Kunsthal in Basel, and we were part of that show. One thing you do when you're a gallery is you pay for museum shows, just in case you guys didn't know that already. Nothing's free. Let's see what else we got in the booth. Yeah, there's one there. Hot dog pictures. These are the best photographs ever, in my opinion. I love these things. You can make fun of me for using too many superlatives too, because I just like everything that I show better than everything else that exists. But let's see. So that was what was happening there. Lucas was just in a show at MoMA called Ocean of Images. Pretty terrible title, but Lucas's work was pretty interesting. He does stuff with the idea that a photograph is a unique print, and changing it in Photoshop by using different tools to kind of act like Buster Keaton within Photoshop and being aware of what's happening and kind of being silly and making you see the process. Let's see, what else did I do? There's a show up right now, but you got to come to the gallery to see that. I'm not going to show you that picture. The shows at the gallery are the most important, by the way. I generally kind of despise the fact that I have to do art fairs, but because I do them to make money for the artists, you know, and occasionally I do what I can. Let's see. So we did a show. The first show was with Gavin Kenyon in 2009, and this isn't a picture of the show, but I thought it was a good picture, so I put it online. It's kind of misleading, you know. Let's see what else we got here. The first, you know, we did some cool stuff. Andra's show after Gavin's show was pretty awesome. You know, some pretty wild sculptures. She wrote me an email, and I looked at it. It was a random submission, and I knew that her work was really, really, really special. So I went to her studio, which is where I now live, and you know, we did stuff happening from there. We did a Bjarne Melgaard show. That was pretty fun. We had some white tigers. It was actually 3 shows in one, and it had drawings and paintings by Guy Bourdin. But the first part got the most attention because we had white tigers, 2 white tigers in the gallery that kind of strolled around and ate little kids. Let's see. Lucas Blaylock at the Frieze Art Fair in London. That was a cool booth. I enjoyed that. That was the last time we did that fair, though, because, you know, honestly, it's kind of beat. But these are some of the photos that were in the fair. Let's see. After that, we did, let's see, Magical Terrorism was a great show by Andra. Here's some pictures of that show. She smashed the front windows of the gallery. So it was just an open space. It was like an open pavilion. And let's see. Gavin Kenyon. Shout out, went to SVA. So did Margaret Weber. You're not mentioning her. Same class. So this was Gavin Kenyon at FIAC. These are pretty wild sculptures. I imagine them kind of as like the plaster casts of the inside of somebody's anus, and then it hardens and they pull it out, and then somebody just, you know, paints it or something. But, you know, some people call these phallic. I reject that.
I, in grad school, also started doing art fairs, randomly actually. I was installing at a gallery, and they were in charge of doing art fairs, and I was there for 3 days installing, art handling, doing things. And on the 4th day, I guess the guy liked me and wanted to see if I could help out on one of the projects for Miami. And I said, sure, absolutely. And I really didn't know the guy at all. It turns out he was kind of a huge asshole. And we get to Miami, and he hadn't provided funding for any signage, any banners, anything like that. I'm supposed to be directing this project, and he is screaming at a 6-month pregnant woman outside, and she turned to me and said, next year you should just do your own project here. And like, that's literally how I was like, well, okay, let's figure that out now. And kind of an opportunity that you don't like pass up. And this was 2 blocks from Art Basel at a hotel called the Catalina Hotel, and that was in 2012. 2011. I did 2012. I did my own show called the Select Art Fair, and did it in Miami 2012 at the Catalina Hotel, 2013 again, and then brought to New York in 2014. at the Dia building and back to Miami, and did a tent on the beach in North Beach. And I guess it was a crash course in just how to do invoicing and signage and banners and promotion and press releases, exhibitor relations, permitting, street signage, dealing with the city, fire marshals, anything you could think of that get thrown in your face while putting on a large-scale event kind of happened. And the impetus of the project was to do something that had a little wholesome quality and had something that had some heart and some spirit. And then I think over the course of 3 or 4 years, it started getting more like a Pulse Art Fair or like a Scope Art Fair, which is just like more commercially driven. And so this past year, I cut ties with my former partner and I did Satellite, which Mark came by. And that is basically using all the acclimate of what I'd learned in the past and resources that I'd met along the way, people who had properties, and I had a history of what I was doing, and I told them I wanted to do basically take over your properties. I want you to donate them to me for free. I'm going to donate them to artist organizations and kind of catch back the spirit of why I was trying to kind of change the art fair scene, which I do think is quite boring. So anyways, I have kind of a very lame curatorial overview that I actually was pitching to people like Pepsi or Google, because when you do projects that don't have funding, like inherently like a gallery purchasing a booth from you, you have to find other ways of getting revenue, and that would be by sponsorship, investors, if there was an actual profit stream. For this project, there wasn't really a profit stream, so there was me just telling people at corporations like why you should be involved. And there are a lot of organizations that are into cutting edge arts, like Google, and this is the cookie cutter thing. Some of the things that I have been trying to push are listed there. I mean, they're pretty self-explanatory, but if you look at, I would say an Art Basel, Frieze, or larger fair model, they aren't really aligned to that. They're more exclusive for VIPs, big buyers, and people like that. And I feel like, especially during Miami Art Basel, you get an influx of people who are interested in seeing art, viewing art, experiencing art, but all you get are sales reports and looking at work at a distance, instead of all of these people who love art being there and getting to experience it firsthand in a way that doesn't just feel like you're not connected to it because you can't afford it. And then here's some reviews, and I'm going to go through it quickly because I'm running out of time, but that's Art F City from my last project. This was a mess. This hotel was vacant on the beach. I mean, there was bed bugs. It was literally a roach motel, abandoned. There was a homeless person living inside of it. I had to clear it out. I personally did a lot of work and permitting to get all of this done. And these are some slides from the past 3 or 4 years. So this past year in Miami, these are some shots. I gave 40 rooms of a hotel over to artist-run organizations who don't have a voice during that time of the year. This was a piece that I curated actually called The Gift Shop, and that was inside of an empty pharmacy that I also took over. This is inside of an empty parking garage in Miami. We had a lot of pop-up bars, like I guess Beverly's does. We had some crazy bars. People love that. I focus a lot on tech because I think, that's the next wave, and I think there's a lot of people who know how to interact with it already. So we had like an app for the neighborhood because I had 4 properties. You could navigate on this app and go check out virtual sculptures, take an Instagram picture, Photoshop, or Facebook, and send it all out to social media. We had like fake icebergs floating in water around it. That was a virtual reality museum. This is the empty side of the empty pharmacy. I love music. I like combining things. I feel like there's a spirit of connection between music, art, everything. I'll go fast. That's Mickey Blanco. That's Sick Feeling, the band. I don't know if you know them. They're pretty awesome. Jungle Pussy. I put a lot of, this is PC Worship inside of my art fair, which is like blasting metal music, which pissed a lot of people off. James Chance, classic no wave. Like he just puts on like a bebop track and danceable stuff and just goes crazy on the horn and dances. That's his wife next to him who just parties out with him. It's kind of awesome. Performance art, love performance art. And trying to find funding for performance artists is important. And then what brings people to your events is like this, I think the other thing that artists can help to deliver when they're leading business and is understanding like how to do things a little differently. And again, this was for sponsorship money, so I'm sorry if it looks a little corporate right now. And then yeah, there's like for events and for openings and for everything, or for your own solo show, you have to understand that you need to talk to people to bring you money to support your events and to support who you are, and there's a lot of brands out there that help do that. That's Turok Contemporary. It's a space from Baltimore. I'm drawing a blank on the artist's name, but it was fantastic sound and sculptural installation. So that's the Tiger Strikes Asteroid, I believe the LA outfit. If you look on their website, I'm sure you can find the artist as well. And that's part of the thing. Like I curated specific parts of this past year, but a lot of the spaces I gave to other people because I feel like it's important for other people to also have a conversation. So there was a lot going on that I was loosely connected to, and I was just generally like the mom.
So you want to come join us at the table and bring the mic with you?
Okay.
I think. Okay, no problem. So I guess Mike, I have a question for you.
For me?
Yeah, Mike. So you talked about when you started Ramiken Crucible, that you were on unemployment and stuff, but you talk just a little bit more about why you thought to start a gallery, and then actually how you start a gallery?
Gonna need a mic.
Yeah, we can share. It's fine.
Okay. I think I started a gallery because I looked around and I had this very strong opinion that I wanted my own hierarchy. I saw the art scene, and it was 2008, 2009. I saw an opening. I got a super shitty space, and I did all the work myself. I never renovate because I think that's a waste of money. And I basically wanted to do art shows, and I wanted to make art shows happen. As an artist at SVA, I still make stuff. I sort of kind of feel that you have to do it yourself. You can't be asking for the system to choose you and pick you up and put you in the place of success, because if it does, usually that's a fleeting moment as well. So if you want something sustainable, you have to make it yourself from the bottom up, and you have to kind of set your goals very high. So you're not thinking, how am I going to do this for a year? How am I going to do this for 10 years? You have to think, how am I going to have respect for myself when I'm dead? Right before I die, and I think back at all the work I made, was it bullshit or not? And if you make work with that question in mind.
We have a question from the audience in the back. Marvin, if you just wait for the mic.
In a couple of the presentations, you talked about, and even just recently, you talked about making, you got to go out there and get it yourself. You got to make a way for yourself. You can't ask, right? A lot of what we, I guess, don't learn in an academic setting is how to make real-world decisions in terms of how to climb up that ladder and how to create that foundation for ourselves. There's no class necessarily on how to go to an event and network and talk to people and talk to a curator or a gallerist or like a collector and figure it out. My question is, it's okay to say that, you got to pull yourself up, you got to make it, but how?
There's no easy way to walk into a room or to talk to people who have money or to sponsors and not feel completely like less than a person, because they really do try to push everything they can at you. But I think like these guys, like you just gotta, if you have a dream, you just gotta find a way to visualize it. I started faking it. I like for like a company like that I had started. It's about doing something first, Like no one's gonna put you in a room with someone if you haven't done something.
Yeah, of
So,
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what did you do, like, to get like, what did you do? Because you're not being specific. Like, what did you do to get in the room with any of these companies? Because you're saying that to get a solo show, or not to get a solo show, but if you have a solo show, you should get these, which is a kind of dope idea, to get, so you don't have to, like, whether it's drinks or whatever, you can get somebody to sponsor it, which would give you more publicity and all this other stuff. That makes sense, complete sense. How did you get in the room with these people? Like, you're not answering the question.
Well, I didn't get in the room before the first event. So I do the event, there gets press generated, that press turns into a package that you send to sponsors. So here's the press package, here's the images, this is the sponsorship that I'm looking for my next project. And it just builds and builds and builds after that. And as personally as artists, I think you have to run your life as a business at this point, because you're the person who's going to be championing yourself the most. There's nobody else. Whether
Okay,
it's
so to play it back, you were working at an art fair, helping like install work and set it up, working for the art fair organizer itself.
Yeah.
They said, "You want to help me do my next art fair in Miami?" You said, "Okay." They were clearly jerks, and the venue that they were renting, a hotel, said, "This guy's a jerk. You want to do the next one?" And you said, "Okay." So you were sort of in the right place at the right time a couple of times, and then so now he has the ball, and you run with it, and you, I guess, start figuring out how to do something you didn't know how to do, which is create an art fair out of nothing. You knew a little bit because you had worked in an art fair a couple times. Right? But then you just kind of, like, you didn't have an MBA, you had a useless MFA,
I wish
right?
I would. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back to you, Mike. So you get this gallery up and running. Was it?
I mean, getting it up and running, I just want to say, first of all, you have the wrong idea. Okay, you're here to make art, not to be successful. And if you make art so that you personally can be successful, it's never going to work that way. The only way to be successful is to have doubt and to create a system for making artwork by which you are always in doubt, and you just have to face that. So there is no formula. In fact, the doubt never goes away unless you're a bad artist. So really, you got to do good shows. I did 2 years of good shows before anybody paid attention, and I just scrapped it together. That's how I did it, honestly. You just have to be tough enough to do it yourself and give everything you can into it, and not care if anybody likes it or not, because this whole MFA thing where you owe all this money after graduate school, it's you're not learning stuff that's going to make that money back. In fact, it's really dubious as to what you are learning. What you are learning, what you're learning is about the art of the people that are in the program with you. So Gavin Kenyon and Margaret Weber were two artists that I thought were very, very good. And they kept developing, and I kept developing, and I show them. So maybe look around and invest some time and some heart and some energy into the discussion about art, and give up on success. Because you're never going to have it. And if you do, you're not a good artist.
Just in the vein of saying yes to things, Leah, can you talk about that too, like all of the opportunities you got to curate through Beverly's?
Yeah, absolutely. I like totally agree with everything that Mike just said, and you know, where you like look around and what makes you want to do stuff. And I was feeling like I knew that there were artists that I believed in that were showing or that were making work that needed more interaction maybe than most people who walk into gallery are kind of willing to give. But I'd also been, you know, making art for that entire time and paying for my life, in addition to doing lots of very strange and illegal schemes. I was a bartender. And so I was like, if there's one thing I know how to do really, really well, and I do it day in and day out, it's take a large group of people and propagandize them into my zone. And a really great way to do that is through booze and music. And so I was like, okay, well, you know, I know there have been like actually like, you know, critical bar art models before. I'd never been to one nor seen one in real life, but I like knew that I could do it, and I knew that I could I knew that I had enough trust with other artists that I believed in, that I knew they would trust me to kind of like collaborate with me in this way. Like Allison, you are a prime example, where your work, you need an audience that's really willing to like dive in pretty hard. And I knew that I could like through a bar model kind of start to get people on that wavelength. And then it was working, just like Mike was saying, like, just by doing it, you know, you kind of like wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat all the time. Like, did I just do the craziest thing ever? You know, and yeah, I did do the craziest thing ever.
Like, how did the Untitled thing happen?
I've been working, I met Omar Lopez Shahood, the curator, when I was in grad school here. And yeah, he was just like, we don't want a corporate sponsored VIP lounge. We have this big space, you know, like we don't want anything like we can't give a space away to a commercial gallery, because that wouldn't be fair if like other galleries are paying and then some galleries aren't, right? So he's like, but you aren't a commercial gallery. You're a different sort of weird exhibition model. And so that's how it sort of started. So when we do offsite projects, we don't run a bar at all. We don't do pop-up bars. I'm not interested in making a pop-up bar. I already own a real bar. So I don't want to serve drinks to someone in a bad version of a bar. A catering service can do that. I want to like use this platform of kind of being able to get things for free in essence as an art exhibition venue, because we don't sell the work. So we kind of can like scoot in on these like sideways things. And because of the nature of the social model that is Beverly's curatorially, like I can say to 18 artists, I don't care what you make, don't send me a proposal, but I know that like you as a human being and as an artist are like conceptually on par to be able to like, number one, produce something that's interesting under like a provisional deadline, and then also be fluid and collaborate with the other artists, with the context. And then so that it makes it really easy, because we can do these things on a very, very, very large scale, just by simply just like using different mechanisms of trust amongst like curating humans, not artwork, not products. So it works.
I'd be curious to hear any and all of you talk about how your enterprises relate to, synergize with, compete against your artistic practice. I mean, clearly it provides a certain level of financial support and puts you to some extent at the center of a world that you've created. But you know, you're also still artists. So how do you manage that, and you know, how do they help and hurt each other? Let's maybe start with you, Brian, since you haven't talked in a minute.
Yeah, I think it's like a tightrope act, really, you know, because you're providing services. You're also wanting services from people that you're providing services to. So it's really it's difficult to create relationships, and when there's like a give and take in that regard. it's doable, and I think it's really about how you approach people, your practice, and your business. I feel like as artists, we can see business in a different way, and I feel like that's kind of what I've been trying to do with the art fairs, is like, especially this past one was to provide services to people who didn't have a voice. I think that's important, and in return, you get back more in terms of ideas and collaboration. Like Leah was mentioning, there's people you can trust and lean on, and like Mike was saying, the people in your class, like these are relationships that are important to facilitate, because they can lead to different things down the line. And so with business, the same thing. You have to foster and develop relationships. And I've had trouble focusing on my own work because of the art business as well. I mean, it's hard to find time for that as well. So you have to prioritize always. But I think that's with life in general.
I thought of two things. One is that the key to answer your question, low overhead, man. That's the secret to success. You ask how to get in the room with people. Well, when you're in the room with people, they're only interested in you if you have something good. They're not interested if you're just in the room. You get in the room with people randomly. That's how it works. Randomly, you end up with Maurizio Catalan in my gallery. That's how really he was the first person to come by and check it out. And it turned out that because I was so independent and I really didn't have anything like anyone else had, he was interested. And so we talked like human beings. There's no professionalization that can replicate that. In terms of my own artistic practice, I give myself secret shows at Ramiken every once in a while. So that's how I do it. Yeah, I invent a new, different artist name each time.
I love that.
I don't know, it can be, for me, I mean, I would say once every 2 weeks, I am so honored to look around inside of a room, in a space, in a structure that I made with my own 2 hands in my brain, and see 100 people of all ages, economic statuses, races, everything, all dancing to the same beat and having the best time. It's really hard to think about making an object after seeing that. It's because it's so incredible, and it never gets less incredible to see. So with that said, I've started to kind of, I can multitask well. I make more art the busier that I am, so that's a good thing. But it definitely started making me think about how my art functions in a much different way. And then also being I own a bar and I'm only gonna be young for so long, so I've gotta figure out what works about this thing that I do that I'm not gonna be able to sustain until I'm 80 years old, and how to make my art start completely usurping those things more and more and more and more. Because at the end of the day, the least stable thing I own is Beverly's. I, as an artist, will exist far longer and better than Beverly's ever would or can. So it's just kind of trying to weigh the functionality of things, I think.
So in your presentation, you mentioned mixing fine art and music in your events. And I run an art space, and it's something I always kind of fear doing because I don't want it to make the art lowbrow. And I just wonder what your thoughts are.
I think it depends on what your goal is for your art space and what you want for that. I mean, for me, I always and I've been critiqued on this in the past. I mean, I know that, I've had critiques where, I had the guy from Sonic Youth banging a guitar in the center of the art fair and people dancing naked and too many. And the bar was too close, and people were bumping into each other, and everyone's getting angry. And there's always going to be some people who are going to be well, that was just terrible. Then I find a lot of times the majority of people are actually interested in seeing this type of stuff happen together in collaboration.
Cool.
I mean, if you're just looking for sales and just like a quiet setting,
It's
then
like
sure, you know.
The money is the music is kind of the moneymaker for the space, and the art's something we just
The
love,
music
you
can
know?
bring people into that will also, like, I think that's the key to what I've been trying to do is bring quality music into that setting so that aside from just hitting the art crowd, there's people who appreciate good music who want to come experience this in a new setting, music in a new setting, and a lot of them sometimes also are interested in art. They just don't realize it, and they wind up being collectors as well.
Cool. Thank you. I booked Six Filling a few times too. They're awesome.
I see 3 hands. We'll go Annalisa, and then Ellie, and then Donna.
I wanted to say, first of all, thank you guys so much. I didn't know this was going to end up functioning this way, and I wanted to say that personally, my thesis is an amalgamation of all 3 of you, so I'm super excited to hear even more and hopefully more questions. But I was curious how you felt about projects being run as nonprofit, because so many times I hear that it's just not a functional model anymore, and whether or not you yourselves think that being really in the thick of it and as young producers of these kinds of projects, whether or not that's really true on the ground floor.
Can I take a crack at that first? Okay, nonprofit means that you make money and you pay yourself a salary. Yeah. So the only difference is that you don't profit at the end of the tax year. And most galleries don't profit at the end of the tax year anyway. Because if you profit, then you have to pay taxes on your profit. So a lot of businesses actually, especially art businesses, they want to pay their costs, but they don't really want to profit at the end of the year because the person who owns the business is the one who runs it. So why would you want to make profit if it means you're just going to have to pay money at the end of the year? Instead, you could use that money that you're going to profit and buy some more stuff or pay yourself some more salary or buy health insurance or hire another employee. So the only difference is that nonprofit status is very hard to get, and it gives you a license to pay yourself with other people's money for the rest of your life.
I just have a counter. Sorry. Just to ask another question, the reason why I've been told a nonprofit isn't as viable a plan is just getting investors in general. Sometimes they don't see kindly to it, as well as like others just at lower level, because wanting to work with smaller businesses or getting funding if you want to do it just locally, not larger like corporations.
Nonprofit is a gold mine.
It is, okay.
Nonprofit is a gold mine. Once you get that 401c status,
See, I have 501c3 status.
501.
Yeah,
501,
501c3 status.
Yeah.
And
Once you get that, then you can apply for all these things, and they need people to give that money to.
okay.
Yeah, the city council has like millions of dollars that they donate to the arts and projects that you don't get unless you're
Yeah.
a nonprofit.
I mean,
I'd
I've
like
been going
to add
through
a dose
grant
of reality to this, having started and run both nonprofits and for-profits. I mean, you guys are sort of right. So it's really easy to form a not-for-profit corporation in the state of New York. It's just as easy as, almost as easy as forming like an LLC. But then to get the non-for-profit tax-exempt status takes a few years. It's not that hard to do. You just have to jump through hoops and be patient.
So say I have both.
Okay, so then what are the advantages and disadvantages of for-profit versus nonprofit? The answer, I think, is really it depends. There are certain ways of making money that, so if you have a gallery and you're selling a lot of art, it would be hard to sustain your not-for-profit status, right? You have to have a tax-exempt mission, which is something like, basically benefiting the public good. Then Mike's absolutely right. You have to spend all your money every year or reinvest it.
Yeah.
There's so much competition for funding from the Department of Cultural Affairs and the Rockefeller Foundation and the Warhol Foundation that it's not money that's just hanging off of trees, waiting for anybody with a 501c3 to grab. But if you have a business that serves the public good in some way, and it's unlikely to actually make a profit, then there are some advantages to being a nonprofit. One is that you don't pay sales taxes. Another is that you're eligible for tax-exempt contributions from individuals, corporations, foundations, and government agencies. And so I guess the answer really is it depends. And I'd be happy to talk to any of you guys about the the different options or the ways to go. I faced the same juncture with Rhizome, and I got advice from a friend who had started a nonprofit film distribution company and also been involved in starting Avalanche, which was one of the original .coms in New York. And he said, make it a for-profit .com, not a nonprofit, because there's all this venture capital and angel capital chasing internet startups right now. It'll be much easier to raise money. So we started as a .com and then converted to a .org, to a nonprofit a few years later, when it became clear that it was never going to be profitable and that we were in fact serving a public good. And also that all that investment capital had sort of dried up.
A key part of that, though, is that you give up your independence, I think.
Yeah, you have to have a board, you have to have,
Yeah, and your mission has to be for the public good.
yeah.
Now, I personally don't believe that art should be responsible for the public good. It's just not compatible with what art is. If you make art responsible for the public good, then you can say that art is bad if it's bad for the public good. And a lot of bad things, a lot of against society ideas couldn't have come and flourished if they were subjected to the rigor of the idea that they had to be for the public good.
So you're perhaps going against what you said earlier and saying that nonprofits are a gold mine.
No, that's about money. I'm
Okay.
talking about your own personal, like creating good art, like making
Okay.
good art shows happen. And I think Mark probably knows more about whether it's a gold mine than me, because I never tried it. But I just, I hear from people. I also look at the lists of endowments, and different things that give money to things, And a lot of stuff that wouldn't get off the ground commercially is allowed to be successful in the nonprofit sector.
Thank you.
Ellie?
So I was wondering, I heard about the stuff that you do around your practice, your art practice, as branching off from where you were as an artist. But can you talk a little bit about how, in practicality, it affected your practice? Like how your art shifted from what it was to what it is, because you branched.
That's such a huge question, but I can definitely say concretely, there's, like I was saying in the presentation, not just our bar, I mean any bar, or if you work in the service industry and you get there an hour early to prep, you do the pre-planning stuff, you have a set amount of time and you don't know what's gonna happen later in the night. It's a big question mark, right? 1,000 people sometimes in one night can come through Beverly's. It's definitely happened before. So to think about that is just a concept, and you might have to call the police. You might have, run out of a whole bunch of stuff. And all these things, these big question marks happen. But you just go and you figure it out. And I really have enjoyed that skill set that has been honed more and more and more, and applying it into my own work. So kind of using my practice, or using, I finish when I finish. I don't finish when it's perfect. I don't finish when the sky is the bluest blue it's ever been. I don't finish when I'm super proud of myself and I want to show my mom and take 1 million pictures and blast it out to my email list because everyone in the world should know that I made a masterpiece. I finish when life makes me finish. And I think that that's something that I really have learned from owning a business, is you don't operate under perfect circumstances, literally, ever. And kind of dispelling that myth with myself as an artist. So.
Anybody else want to take on the swerve?
Sure. When I went to grad school, I started the business. I also had recently been married and found out I was pregnant, and the fact that I was starting a new business, was going to a master's in fine art, and there was no real place where money was coming in, was a was really troublesome, and I wound up sleeping upstairs many a night and fighting a lot, and remember speaking with, and also struggling with the idea of starting some new business and dealing with a child and also trying to function as an artist. And actually, Kate Gilmore was one of my professors, and she had just had a kid, and I was consulting with her, and she was saying that it's helped her practice, actually, because even when you're working or doing other things or you're focused on your kid, you're still an artist and you're still thinking about projects or ideas. And when you do get the time to go to work, it's actually more focused because you realize the importance of that time, or you've already thought about it enough so that you're not wasting time. You're not just sitting in a studio looking at a canvas or looking at a sculpture and waiting for inspiration, because you don't have time for that. You already thought it through in the middle of the night when you're sleeping or something like that. So I think it just, yeah, you make the most out of the moments you have outside of the work.
I would say, for me, when I started the gallery, it helped me immensely, because instead of me feeling like I was always in crisis, like I was trying to get recognition, I was giving other people recognition. And every day I was able to delete my ego just a little bit more, and that squeaky, awful, really annoying voice inside you that says, I deserve to be successful too, goes away. And then you can focus on what you're interested without that pressure. And crazy art comes into your brain when you come to it without needing it to be a success vehicle for yourself. So for me, I grew a lot. With the gallery, I felt no pressure ever to make anything for anyone else. And so things would just come into my brain, and I would make them, you know. And I don't make stuff very much either. I mean, a thing that happened was I read Duchamp's biography, and he was also an art dealer sometimes, and he made very few works of art. So I think people make too much, and so I took a break, and the break was really helpful.
Donna's up next, sorry.
Hi, guys. I was listening to you describe what it is that you do outside of your art, and it sounds to me that you have the same sort of outcome in forming a community and having people engage with you through these things that you do. And I know a big part of our discussions while in grad school was thinking about social practice and relational aesthetics. And I wondered if you ever have considered what you do actually your art practice.
I have a personal, kind of problem with the term social practice, because, I could go work at a nursing home and, wipe butts, and that would be, a really valiant thing that someone needs to do, and I could call it social practice. But really, I'm working at a nursing home, and that doesn't need to have another name. That's good enough on its own. And, I don't think that's my job right now. I feel like my job right now is to figure out something that someone else isn't doing. To do the thing that I can do a little bit different than the things that everyone else can do. But then not to try to feel like just because you're doing something that everyone else could do, that you have to try to make it something more than it is. That are, the world functions because people care. The people go and they, refugees open bodegas in our city every day that are brilliant works of art, but the best thing about them is that they're not trying to be art. They just function. And so, I don't know, I think that I don't know if it makes anything better to try to put names to it or necessarily try to combine it, because it just, everything actually is just what it is,
I think it's just a shift in the way you think about it, because it sounds like you obviously derive a lot of personal satisfaction through your actions, and how you label it is entirely up to you, but it sounds like you're making art to me. you know? It sounds like,
When you kind of waxed poetic at this one point, talking about a room full of people bobbing their heads to the same beat in this space that you made with your own hands, and it's hard to make an object after having that experience. You don't have to call it art.
But right, exactly. It doesn't make it like better if I call it art, but
It's got
like,
4 legs, wags its tail.
that's
Rules.
what made me think about it too, is when you describe that moment. I mean, you want people to interact with your art in that way too, and it is, in my opinion, art.
Okay, so back to the. Okay.
I don't think it's art. I think what Leah is trying to say is that she's proud of the fact that she made a bar, and she would also like to work on art, and that they're 2 separate things, you know. And I would, you know.
Do both.
Yeah, I don't think that making a bar is art. I think that making a bar is making a bar, and you know, I'm pretty up to date on relational aesthetics, you know, and I like Nicholas Bourriaud's writing quite a bit. One of the things he did, and this goes back to your question, how to get in the room. Nicholas Bourriaud wrote a book where he named a bunch of artists who were all struggling for recognition on the lower Manhattan, and by naming these people, he became friends with them. So he picked good artists, wrote this book about them, and suddenly he had his own club. So, you know, that's one way to get in the room. Back to your question, you know, because I understand your frustration. You're wondering, like, how to get anything done, right?
So I want to get some clarification about the school of wanting to make money off of art or trying to find alternative ways to sustain your practice. I feel like a lot this semester, our talks have focused on people who have tried to find alternative ways to support themselves and shun the idea of being successful financially as an artist. And I want to know why that is looked so badly upon. Why is it so bad that someone wants to support themselves or their family financially in the gallery system? And why is it so bad?
I think the gallery system has a function, and it is to sell things. And I think the art fair world in general is for trade and commerce to happen. And I think there's a large amount of people who are interested in finding a decorative object to put on their wall.
But your language right there.
This is what I'm saying, though. I feel like there's nothing wrong with trying to find ways to sell your work. And I'm telling you, there's a lot of digital and new media and virtual reality and augmented reality people who are doing things. There's video artists, there's performance artists, and they're all out there struggling. And they don't really have a set market, per se, for them. But that doesn't mean they're not an artist, and they're not trying to shun commercialism. This is what they're passionate about. So I think a lot of people, as artists, wind up having to pay the bill, and so they turn to something that is sellable instead of something they're truly passionate about. So that's.
But that sounds to me, and I'm not trying to get into an argument, but that sounds to me very presumptuous. You're saying that because what you're in theory is saying that if I can produce a product that one really is true to what I want to do as an artist, but happens to also touch people and speaks about current social issues and is successfully in the gallery system, that's still a problem because it doesn't serve those who have work that is on and whose work can, survive on the internet or whatnot. And if I even want to get deeper into that, then how does that affect? I don't know. That'll bring into something else that's not worth talking about.
Being in the gallery system doesn't mean you make money.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Also, many people, maybe most people in the gallery system don't make money. But I think that there's something dispelling them. I'm saying this from personal experience. So many artists that I know claim to make their livelihood off of their art are lying. They don't need to make as much money to live as someone who truly is starting at zero or in the negative, right? Which I presume most people who went through this program are now in the negative, me being one of them. So it's that's why I was saying on the thing, if you think, how can you be an institution conceptually, right? How can you be as sustainable as possible? A gallery could be one way of doing that, absolutely. But also galleries, their job isn't to make you money necessarily. So like, how else can you be an institution? By creating a different form, like a different business, like we're talking about. Working at Starbucks, they have tuition reimbursement. That's totally valid as well. Like, I think it's just like, what is your end goal? If your end goal is to make money as an artist, that is putting you down a tunnel of, number one, an immense amount of dishonesty, because a lot of people who will tell you that they're doing that are not, in fact, doing that. And then also, like, what kind of life is that? Is that $25,000 a year? Because, we go and as artists run around immorally chasing the cheapest real estate that we can with master's degrees. Like, that's wrong, So like, what is sustainable for you? And I think that that's the thing, is it's like trying to talk about it in terms of getting a gallery and having a life is so simple that I don't think it's really like necessarily a conversation that can be talked about in any sort of general means. It's so specific to the person.
It is very specific to that person, but I feel like in most cases, in these talks that we have had, it's really generalized. And it's generalized in what you've just said. If you go that path, you are going to fail.
There are some people who do manage to do it and to have net revenue at the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
Right? There aren't that many, but it certainly is possible. And you're right, there is this general critical attitude in academia about the art market. I think less so here than at many places, where we try to have a somewhat more practical education. But you're right, there's a lot of sort of, there's this idea that somehow you're selling out, or that it's less serious than the kind of stuff I do. I don't see it that way at all.
There's one big elephant between that's two sides of the dichotomy, which is museums and academia versus gallery and commercially driven art.
Well, but most people cross back and forth.
I'm not saying it's like a symmetric, like complete separate worlds. They evolve around the idea of how to make it.
Well, I think the goal for most of you probably is to show in galleries and sell your work, and hopefully do public projects and show in museums, and and have a really well-rounded career that'll last through times when your work is getting a lot of recognition and times when it's not. I think to wrap up, Mike, I want to apologize for baiting you and being rude, and I want to thank you.
It's fun. I actually think that what happened tonight is a strong dose of honesty, and that is what everybody was looking for.
Okay.
Right?
We can agree on that. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Brian and Leah, and thanks to all of you.